Welcome to Aspire to Retire. I'm your host, Cheryl Nelson, here with Ralph and Tim Shore, along with Scott Earhart, all from Welcome Home Financial Partners. Good to be here with you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, so excited to be here. And in today's fast-paced world, financial stability is paramount. And our show will provide you with insights, practical tips, and actionable strategies to help you take control of your finances. Now, today we unravel complexities of managing your debt and understanding the relationship of the credit score as you enter retirement. So there's a lot to dive into today. So let's get right to it, guys. We're talking about credit scores and debt management. So how can you explain debt management and credit scores, and how are they connected to one's retirement planning and financial future?
Well, what I would say is, to most people, what we need to understand is that there is a correlation between your debt structure and retirement. Because give you an example, we've got clients that are coming in that do not have that magical number that everybody thinks they need to have, $1 million. But the second side of the equation is this: how much debt do you have? How much expenses do you have going out to debt? If they don't have any large credit card debt, things of that nature, they've got everything under control, they don't need that $1 million that everybody thinks they need to. But if somebody's got $2 million, then all of a sudden, if they got $25,000 a month in expenses, they may not look as good. So there's a correlation between debt and retirement.
Interesting. Looks like you guys have something to add over there.
Well, when we talk about credit scores in retirement, I think it's something that a lot of people step back from retirement and don't think that they need to worry about. It's definitely something you need to keep an eye on, manage your debt, make sure that your credit score is still in a higher range, so that if the worst does happen and you need to make a major purchase, you have the ability to get leverage.
But it also affects other things that you have, maybe like insurance for cars, house, things like that, because that does affect how much you'll have to pay for it.
Yeah, so let's dive into that a little bit deeper. Existing debt, credit card debt, even loans, how does that affect your retirement?
Well, as Ralph was talking about earlier, the ability to service that debt, your income and how do you pay for that debt, does that. And ultimately in retirement, we want to have the ability to do fun things, right? We want to be able to go on vacations. We want to be able to buy the grandkids whatever the grandkids want. So if you are having to spend your disposable income to manage debt, you can't do all the fun things you want.
Yeah, and think about in today's world, right? Interest rates are on the rise, and God only knows when that's going to stop.
Right.
So when interest rates are up, if your credit score is not good, then your interest rate is going to be even higher. So it's going to be more expensive to get that loan. So those are all things that we talk to folks about. It's all going to be correlated. The lower your expenses, the better off you're going to be for retirement.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. With the credit score, you pay higher interest because of that?
Yeah, then that's the way it works, and a lot of people don't think about it because, you know, a few years back, interest rates were so low, even if your credit score wasn't that great, you would still get a decent interest rate. Right now, the way interest rates have skyrocketed, it's not the case.
And I will also say, we don't have a money printing press in the back of our homes.
We don't?
Not like the government.
I thought you did.
No, not yet. Not yet. We might have to before too long.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing. We all need that. So what about strategies that we can help with our debt? And because we're all getting closer to retirement every day. And so what can we do? I know it's easier said than done, but help us out here.
Well, what I would say to most people, you kind of have to know your numbers. You kind of need to understand your budget. You need to know what's coming in as you're fixing to retire, what you've got going out. How many people have ever taken a serious look at that? That's where we come in, and we show people what it's going to look like. Visualize your retirement so you can make some changes if you have to. If you're upside down and you've got more expenses going out and you've got income coming in, you might need to make a change before you retire. You may have to wait another year or two until you get that under control so you can do those things that you've always dreamed about.
And that's absolutely why we encourage people to give us a call and come in and do the retirement roadmap. That's going to take into account your income and your expenses and how that's going to extrapolate out over the next 20 plus years of your retirement, so you can see exactly what's coming in, what's going out, and what you need to retire comfortably.
Yeah.
But what if you have a lot of debt, though? If you already have a lot of debt, aren't you already in trouble?
Well, it depends. You want to minimize the debt, but one thing that we always see a lot is everybody's worried about paying off their house, right? So they're willing to pay $100,000, maybe even $150,000 a year just to shove over to that mortgage to get it taken care of. Well, is debt a bad problem, or is uncontrollable debt the bad problem? So there's a lot of people who are making, six-figure income, and they're not focusing on saving for retirement But when you retire, you're in charge now of your paycheck because most folks now aren't getting pensions. So when it comes back to the debt part, if you have the cash flow to pay for the debt, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But if it's uncontrollable, if you have bad spending habits now, what's going to happen in retirement? If you've got bad spending habits now, more than likely your nest egg isn't going to be able to last you for forever, and that's what it needs to do.
But the other thing I would also say is a lot of people would at some time say they want to take and pay off their mortgage, so where's that going to come from? They may have to take it out of their 401k. What they don't realize is when they do that, they're going to have to pay taxes on that amount. So if you had to pull out $100,000 from your retirement program, not only does that reduce that amount that you can live off of, now you're going to have more taxes to pay that year.
Oh, no, don't even say that. When I hear that, that's just scary. And that's why I think it's so important to have professionals like you folks, right?
Yeah, it comes into play because we sit down and we talk about the budget. A lot of people have never taken a look at a budget before, but the big thing is, what do you want? Do you want to have actual investable assets, or do you want to have a free and clear house? Right? That's what everybody gets focused in on, is nobody wants a mortgage. I've never met anybody other than maybe a little bit of a tax deduction to where, hey, I want to have a mortgage. Nobody wants it. But if you've got the cash flow, if you've got the assets saved to create that income, then that's not the issue.
Oh my goodness. And I want to go back to the credit score for a second, because talking about this, I think you really open people's eyes when it comes to better interest rates and even scoring better deals such as travel deals, insurance rates. How does that all really factor in?
Well, basically what they'll do, if you go to a bank for a loan, they'll take a look at your credit score, number one, besides your assets and things like that. Because what happens is that tells them how good a risk you are in order to repay that back. So you need to make sure that you're in a good position so they don't charge you extra money for interest rates or taxes, things like that. So,
and the biggest thing to think of is when you're retired, a lot of banks are not really willing to give retirees bank loans because they don't have that income coming from the employer. So if they don't have the pension, they just have Social Security, maybe they don't have but so much assets, they're not really willing to give so much in a bank loan. So that's where the credit score is really going to come in, because if you have a low credit score and you don't have that income coming from an employer, the banks aren't really willing to do something for you.
There's so much that I learn every time we get together with these shows. And speaking of that, we have a special offer for our viewers, don't we, Tim?
That we do, Cheryl. So the first 10 callers who have saved $250,000 or more for retirement, we'd like to personally invite them into the office. Call this number you see on the screen, 833-897-4845. And there's also a little QR code down there as well that you can scan. So give us a call. We'll sit down with you and create your very own roadmap. And Cheryl, the best part is we do it on a complimentary basis.
I love that. And that QR code I think is genius as well. Just take your cell phone, open it up, the camera, put it up there, and you'll see the little link pop right up. So do that with that QR code. And we are going to take a brief break here, but we're going to open up those phone lines as Tim said. So if you would like some personal advice about retirement planning and more, once again, call 833-897-4845. Coming up next, we will share some tips to help you maintain a healthy credit score. Stay with us.
Imagine the future you've been wanting all along. A world where your retirement income is covered and you don't have to worry. Your financial assets are protected, and you have an experienced team fighting every day to grow your assets. Imagine a company creating tax strategies and legacy plans to make sure your loved ones are protected no matter what happens. At Welcome Home Financial Partners, we're an experienced financial team with the right professional licenses and an unbreakable commitment to making our clients feel like family. Here you'll find determined, friendly faces in a world filled with obstacles and problems. We help plan your retirement income to ensure you won't run out of money in retirement. We build in protection to make sure your assets are covered on all sides. We focus on growing your wealth to combat inflation and rising cost of living. And we design tax strategies to help you avoid paying back what you shouldn't while protecting the people you love. Our team never stops fighting for you. With an unparalleled work ethic, we work hard because we know your future depends on it. We're proud to help you choose the life you want to live in retirement. Welcome to your financial future. We're so glad you're here.
Welcome back to Aspire to Retire. Today we are talking about credit scores and how to maintain that. I know that's something that we're always striving to get the best number we can. So let's get right back to this, guys. How can you get that credit score? Can you share us some tips about maintaining a healthy credit score throughout one's life, including during retirement? Because that number, what is that magic number that we all want to hit, or a range?
Well, I think for most people, you want to see a 700 number or higher is where you want to be as far as your credit score, and maintaining that or building that in retirement. A lot of it's going to come down to what are you making your payments, and the first thing and most important thing is make those payments on time, and whether that be a small credit card balance, possibly a car payment. If you are carrying your mortgage into retirement, just make sure you're making those on time. That'll keep your credit score as healthy as possible.
The other thing too they need to understand is they don't need a lot of credit card debt in there, but they do need to make those payments. But there's also a balance. If you've got, say, $50,000 in credit available and you only have $2,000 or $3,000 versus $40,000, that's also a part of that credit score and how much you can borrow later down the road. So that is something they need to be aware of also.
Now, if you don't pay off the full amount on your credit card every month, but you pay the minimum amount, does that lower your credit score?
It doesn't help your credit score.
It doesn't.
So
Okay.
you want to make sure
Okay.
that realistically what you want to do is, if you're using your credit card, if we're just specifically talking about credit cards at this point, whatever you put on that credit card, you want to pay it off in a month. You don't want to carry over a balance. That's
Okay.
what you really want to do.
Got
But
it.
if something comes up and there's an emergency, because that's really what, other than your normal expenses that you can pay off monthly, if there's a dire emergency, you can put it on your credit card. Pay that off as fast as you can. Don't go to the minimum payment. Now, when it comes to other loans, you want to make sure that you're at least on time and try to pay more than the minimum. So going back to your mortgage payment, if you pay one additional payment a year, that knocks off a few years of a 30-year mortgage. So there's different strategies to take a look at, but it all goes back down to your budget.
It does, and that's where financial advisors come in. How can they assist in managing the debt and improving credit scores in preparation for retirement?
I would say for most people, they need to understand their budget. They need to know what they've got coming in, what they've got going out. And that's the best thing that you can do, because if you do have a lot of credit card debt, or maybe even, believe it or not, people are going to retirement, they have some college debt they're paying off, maybe for their kids, maybe not so much for them, but for their kids, because they signed off on them. So they need to understand what they've got coming in, what they've got going out, so they can say, all right, let me take the highest credit card debt and pay those off first, and then continue that process. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I know that we all run into it when we're meeting with individuals that carry a little bit of debt with them into retirement. We're going to take a deep dive into that debt and not only look at the balances, but also what are the interest rates on each debt, and help them create a plan to attack that debt, ultimately get them out of that debt or minimize it, and give them more free cash flow in retirement.
That's got to be scary too when you're going into retirement and you are carrying some debt. What are you supposed to do if you have the college debt from paying for your kids' college tuition? Do you transfer it over to them? I mean, what do you do in that point?
It's according to your kids, how well they like you, whether
boy.
they'll take it over or not, right?
Yes.
If you agree.
Will they help take care of you when you're older? Do you want to burn that bridge?
Or is that old expression, be careful what you do for your kids, because they're the ones that are going to choose your nursing home for you.
Oh my gosh.
That's right. That's good advice.
That's the scary part about all of this. All right, so what about some key takeaways or piece of advice that you would like to leave our viewers with regarding managing debt, improving credit scores, and achieving a secure retirement?
The biggest thing that I'd say to any of our viewers that have questions about debt, credit scores in retirement is meet with a financial professional. Sit down, have somebody do a deep dive, a deep analysis on your specific situation, and help you create a plan to maintain that credit score and minimize that debt. And we'd certainly love it if we were the financial advisors you chose.
But also, most advisors, they only think about your investments, and that's all they're concerned about, not the rest of it that we talk to people about.
Right.
Yeah, and setting a budget is key, and it's paramount, because you got to create your income when you're in retirement, and your income's got to take care of at least those expenses. But let's be honest, we don't want to retire just to pay our expenses. So we want to make sure that we've got more money coming into us. So, but if you don't have a budget, if you don't know what your numbers look like, then how do we do this? So
Yeah.
a lot of people we've sit down with before, they've never taken a look at their budget and they have no idea that, hey, I'm spending $10,000 a month for my expenses, when they thought, hey, I'm only spending $4,000, because they don't take a look at how much they're spending for groceries. They don't take a look at all the insurances that they have. There's so many other things that come into it.
I think because it's stressful to think about doing that. And that's where folks like you come in handy, because I don't want to look at all that. I just want to give you guys everything and say, okay, here, this is what I do. Here are my receipts. Go, run.
Yeah. Well, we don't want the receipts. We want to take a look at the numbers. So, but we walk everybody through the process. And some people already know their numbers. I mean, we've met with people who have their own spreadsheets, which they do their own due diligence, which is great. But there are a lot of people out there that just haven't taken a look at their numbers. And when you're getting close to retirement, we always talk about that little retirement red zone. If you're 5 years away from retirement, we've got to really take a look at those numbers, take a look at your risk tolerance, take a look at your assets, and we need to formulate this plan based off of you.
Yeah.
And you really need to take your head out of the sand,
Yes.
because all of a sudden you're in retirement and you don't know your numbers and you don't understand where everything's coming from.
Right. And, speaking of numbers, we've been talking about credit scores all show today. And I meant to ask you, what exactly is a credit score and how is it calculated?
That's a really good question.
Do you know the answer to that?
I do not know how they calculate it, but it's a system where the central agencies rate you as a consumer and as a debt risk. Can you pay it back? The higher your number is, the better risk you are for a loan provider or a credit provider.
Yeah, and it goes through several different things. How well you are of maintaining or carrying over a balance, which they don't want you to carry over the balance. How long of a credit life do you have? If you've had a credit card for 10 years versus 2 years, or a loan for X amount of years, they want to see the longest period of time and for you to be diligent on paying off your expenses, paying off your debt. There's so many things that come into play. But at the end of the day, it is a number that is beneficial for you to be as high as it possibly can.
But they also take a look at your debt to equity ratios. So if you've got a lot of debt out there and not a lot of assets, and that also plays an important part into the credit scores.
Is it true that once you open credit cards and you have them for, let's say, 10, 15, 20 years, I mean, I've got one, I don't even use it anymore because somebody told me, don't close that card, it'll affect your score. Is that true?
That's true. They don't want you to close the account.
Just leave it in my drawer and don't use it? What?
Yep.
Well, it's also beneficial for you because should the worst happen, should you need to access credit for something, you have access to that.
As long as you're not paying crazy annual fees for a card you're not using.
Yep.
Right, exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, gosh, that's good to know. So good or poor credit score, how does that impact your ability to prepare for retirement, including securing loans, mortgages, or retirement properties? And we've talked about this some.
So let me just ask you a question. Do you feel like you're going to have to buy a car when you're in retirement? Maybe at least one,
Probably,
maybe two?
yeah.
So if you don't have a good credit score, so all of a sudden now you may not be able to get those 0% car loans that you advertise on TV all the time. So that does play an important part.
That's where it comes into play. All right, we have to take another break, but before we do, once again, Tim, that special offer.
Yes, we do, Cheryl. So the first 10 callers who have saved $250,000 or more for retirement, we'd like for them to call 833-897-4845. We'd like to personally sit down with you and create your very own retirement roadmap. And Cheryl, the best part is we'll do it on a complimentary basis.
Love that. Don't forget to scan that QR code. That'll help you get right there. All right, it is time to open up those phone lines once again. Time for a commercial break, but keep those questions coming. Take advantage of these professionals and call for advice right now. Once again, 833-897-4845. Coming up next, it's my favorite part of the show. We will feature some of your burning questions.
It was the longest running bull market in history. Everything was looking up. While inverted yield curves pointed to a recession, the market kept going. And then, if you're planning to retire soon, that could spell bad news for your returns. Our team can help you better withstand the bear market. Now more than ever, you need a financial professional to stand with you. Visit our website to learn more about our services. You can call or email our office to schedule your complimentary consultation today.
Welcome back to Aspire to Retire. It's our favorite part of the show, time to feature some of your burning questions. Guys, I love this part. You ready for it?
Ready.
Absolutely.
You
Let's
have
go.
to be ready because we're going to get started. So we're going to start with Doris from Louisa. Doris says, I recently went through a divorce and it had a negative effect on my credit score and increased my amount of debt. I'm concerned about my ability to retire. What should I do?
Number one thing I would say is you need to talk to somebody about your situation. Once again, know your numbers. What do they do? What's going to happen? What kind of credit do you have? How much loans do you have? Things of that nature.
Absolutely. I mean, Doris just went through a massive life change, and everything she was accustomed to in her financial life is now completely different. She's relying on herself, her income more than likely. So sitting down with somebody that's going to help you understand the new reality of finances in your post-divorce life is paramount.
And at the end of the day, we've talked about credit score throughout the entire show, but the credit score is not the end-all be-all for retirement. It is correlated and it does affect it, but that's not everything. So even though there's a negative impact on your credit score, that doesn't necessarily mean you might not be able to retire. But once again, that's why you give us a phone call, come into the office, we'll sit down with you and talk.
Yeah, definitely. All right, next up is Ron from Goochland. Ron says, I'm considering paying off my mortgage using funds from my 401k. What do you guys think? Ooh, I don't know, is that bad?
Well, more than likely, if you did that, your 401k is probably pre-tax money. So if you had to pull out, let's say $100,000 out of your 401k, you're not keeping $100,000 to give over to the bank for your mortgage, right? So depending on the rest of your income is going to determine how much taxes are going to come out of that $100,000. So I don't normally suggest doing that, but once again, it's always a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Once again, give us a call, come into the office, we'll sit down and talk to you. But more than likely, I would rather have that money invested so we've got money to create income and have it for emergencies instead of just having a free and clear house. Because last time I checked, I can't pick up my home, take it to the grocery store when I got to go buy my groceries and say, here's a piece of my house, let me purchase my groceries.
If you could do that, you'd probably be a billionaire.
Right.
Yeah, you'd have magical powers. All right, next up is Chuck from Powhatan. Chuck says, I'm concerned about leaving debt to my wife when I die. What can I do to make sure that doesn't happen? Oh, Chuck sounds like a good man.
Chuck, it does sound like a good man, and I think anybody would be concerned about leaving debt
Yeah.
to spouse or children or whatever. But the thing I'd say to Chuck is, this is going to sound a bit repetitive, but give us a call. Come in, meet with us. We're going to help you understand what your debt is, what it's going to look like should the worst happen. Should you pass on, what are we going to leave to our spouse? And then we're going to come up with some strategies to offset that debt. Either is it working with the assets you already have? Is it purchasing something like life insurance to leverage up the estate or the legacy you can leave to your spouse or your kids to offset that debt?
All righty. Next is Kay from Richmond. Kay says, what is more important, paying off my debt or saving for retirement?
Okay, what I would say is both of them are important. Now you have to figure out which one is a bigger priority for you. But I would say that you need to have an understanding how both of them affects your retirement down the road.
If I were Kay, I'd say, you didn't answer the question.
Well, here's what I'd say to Kay. I think Ralph's right, and you can do both at the same time. You just have to work out a strategy to service the debt and, sock away for retirement. And as you service that debt, you're able to increase what you can put into your retirement nest egg.
Right, I mean, because what if the debt's 0% interest, right? So then you can chip away little by little with that debt versus putting more into your 401k. I mean, does she have any money saved away for retirement? So those are all
Right.
things, everything's always personalized to that individual. That's why we like for them to come into the office.
But the other thing I would tell her is if you're saving for retirement and you get a bonus at work or a pay increase,
Yeah.
you need to take that money and put towards your retirement or the debt, depending upon. But most people would take it out and spend it. We've
Yeah.
seen that all the time.
We all want to go on a lavish vacation, right?
That's right. Only you, Cheryl. Only
Only
you.
me? No, there are other people who do that. All right, next is Charlie from Fredericksburg. Charlie says, I put my monthly bills onto a credit card and pay it off every month. Is that a good strategy?
Yeah, I think that's a really good strategy as long as you continue to pay that off and you don't carry
Yeah.
over that balance. Because a lot of the companies now, depending on which company you're using, they're going to give you points back, right? So there's either
Yes.
cash rewards or there's incentives or what have you. So you're still paying the same amount of money. You just got to make sure that you're not waiting 3 or 4 weeks to pay that off, because there could be some interest charge. So you've got to pay attention to those variables. You got to make sure that you pay it off in time and you're not carrying over the balance. So that way you're kind of getting money back.
And tying into the theme of our show, if you are using that as a strategy and you're diligently doing it, you're going to keep your credit score higher and have that positive credit score going into your retirement years.
All right. How about Barbara from Millette? She says, we recently downsized our home and have extra money for the sale of our old house. What should we do with that money? Oh, well, Barbara can give it away.
Well, are you suggesting she's
Not at all.
Okay.
What are you saying about me?
Well, what I'm saying is there's so many different ways that we can help you take care of that money, whether it's for a non-qualified account. Do you need it later down the road? Do you need it for income? Or do you want to pass it on to your kids in the best tax efficient way of doing it? So there's a lot that we can help them do with that. Would you agree?
That's a very broad question. It's, what do you want to do with the money? And that sounds kind of like a stupid question, but at the end of the day, what do you want that money to do? Do you have debt that you need to pay off? Do you want to invest the money? Do you want to leave it to your kids? What do you want to do with that money? So that's hard to answer that question.
Donate it to charity, all kinds of things you can
Charity
do
of
with that
Cheryl.
money. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I would donate to an animal shelter.
There we go.
Saying.
I agree.
We all have a charity that we love, right? All right, let's do one more. Paul from Maiden says, I've always wanted to retire without a mortgage payment. I'm getting close to retirement now and thinking about paying off the house. Is it a good idea to pay off my mortgage early?
It depends, because we really don't know a lot about his situation. Would you agree? That we cannot answer that question just off of that. It might be a good idea, because if he doesn't have any other debt, and if he's got money sitting over here in the bank that might be earning only 0.5%, then it might pay him to do that, but we don't know that.
If you have a cash flow issue, then you might want to pay it off. So.
Okay, gotcha. Special offer before we go.
Yeah, so the first 10 callers who've saved $250,000 or more for retirement, give us a call, 833-897-4845. We'd like to get you into the office where we'll create that very own roadmap just for you. Cheryl, best part is we'll do it on a complimentary basis.
You're supposed to smile at the end of that. Ding!
There we go.
That QR code right there. There's that smile. I love that. Make sure you scan that QR code once again. That wraps up today's show, guys. We always have a lot of fun here talking about some serious stuff, but we have some laughs as well. Thank you so much for joining us today on Aspire to Retire. Next time, we will talk all about wealth and estate planning. Now, if you'd like some advice, once again, call us now, 833-897-4845, and you could be featured on our next episode. On behalf of all of us at Aspire to Retire, I'm your host, Cheryl Nelson. Have a great day.